the sixth episode of Foresight of the community Discord. I'm Efical from Server 1, and my
And
co-host.
I am Raine from Server 1.
And we're gonna speculate today about different stuff, what's coming up in the future, what meta changes we want to see, and stuff like that. So, the first thing I want to talk about actually is Guild Wars. What would you say is more likely to be? Is it going to be global, like with Korean servers and global servers and oceanic servers, of course, all combined, or is it server specific?
I really hope it's global, even if Korea is significantly ahead, only because at least on the majority of the global servers, there is a single dominant guild across, I'm betting, all three servers, and nobody is going to touch them.
Yeah.
Despite how they presented the Guild Wars information, saying that it didn't matter if you were the highest or the lowest, it was about contribution, I am sure in some way it's going to favor those who have spent or are in a top guild than those who aren't.
Yeah. See that sad reality that Korea will probably dominate the top 10 for sure.
I'd welcome it.
I'd
I think it'd be
welcome it as
fun.
well because that's something we can work towards even on server 1, especially Chaos being the guys with the top 10 in the guild. Like, there's not much competition besides ourselves.
Well, and I assume it's the same on server 3 with Raid and K.
Oh yeah.
I- I'm pretty sure their guild pretty much dominates server 3, and I don't know much about server 2, so I think it's the Vietnamese or foreign group. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I've seen the leaderboard today, and they are just all Asian letters, so pretty much total domination on that part.
I mean, my assumption is that they're calling it Guild Wars, but the way they described it, it almost sounded like co-op raid.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure what they're going to do with it. I'm okay with a co-op raid as long as everybody would get rewards. So at the end of the day, contribution I don't think would matter so much as guild ranking and then rewards off of it. So you're always still gaining player power.
Yeah, like they will do the same as with, for example, Elemental Dungeon, that the rewards are pretty much tiered. And rank 2 gets almost the same as rank 1, and rank 3 gets almost the same as rank 2. There won't be much difference, but I hope it's somewhat significant enough that you can make an impact to get better rewards as a overall contribution, like they did with the reward of Elemental Dungeon in general, like deal 1p damage and get all the stuff up to that.
Most people can hit that without even trying now, which is nice because it's free rewards for everybody, which is what it
really
should be.
It's really good.
They need forgot who it was in this server. It may have actually been in our chaos server, but the individual who said that using the Christmas event as a baseline for everybody can get to 100, it's not like determined based on how much money you spend or everything. Obviously the people who spend on the event are going to get more, but at the same time the people who don't spend on the event can still get really good rewards. I wish they would do more events that kind of coincide along those lines where everybody gets a really decent reward, and if you want to spend to get a bit more, you can, but it's not a requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Christmas reward is one of the most insane events we have ever had. That's for sure. So if you spend, you get a lot of return, But even as a free-to-play player, you get a shit ton of rewards. Like
And they need to keep
it's
not. I
really
hope
good.
they keep the same mindset for Guild Wars, and they kind of mimic what they did with Elemental Raid, in that everybody gets good rewards. It's not just top 10 or bust. It should be everybody.
Hmm.
So I hope they continue that in 2024
Absolutely
and
agree.
not go back to the pay to win or bust mechanics, because that's usually what kills the games.
Yeah, it's just not fun for neither the spender nor the free-to-play player, and no one in between. Like, it's just frustration because either the spender gets way too much or the spender is capped in what he can get. Like, it doesn't feel good.
I mean, I know for me personally, I haven't spent except for an occasional pass here or there lately. I've just not been inclined to.
Yeah, me neither.
And I feel like that's the mentality that it should be, is you should spend if you want to, not you should spend to be able to play.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed. Speaking of play, I'm playing currently my fourth item find because my sword is actually only um, level 360. Never dumped any enhanced stones into it.
Mine's only 51.
Ooh.
Don't feel bad.
So yeah,
I play Fort with it as well, just for the mastery boost.
exactly. Farming mastery points and so on, but it's sad to see that Fort and Retribution are so much left behind. What would you say
Kind of.
is the main thing that's holding back Fort and Red?
Um, I just saw Ajwad's question in regards to that. I don't
Mm.
think the meta is going to change for Guild Wars. Um, Fire Retribution, as an example, is really good for mobbing, but its single target damage, you're basically playing a roulette game on Meteor and hitting a cataproc on it at the right time.
Yeah,
I don't I don't see that ever changing unless they dynamically change how the game functions at a base level. And this kind of is the same issue Fort is seeing right now, is Fort and Retribution. Fortitude's problem is there's no scalers. It doesn't scale. If you look at the attack based builds, there's tons of ways to scale them and they go infinitely higher. If you look at HP, it's been the same thing since the entrance of the game.
mm-hmm.
Like nothing's changed. When you got U equipment, it pretty much solidified at that point that Fort was done. And then you look at, for example, the recent introduction of, I believe, the Tower of Trials, and you look at the rewards. Like, they didn't even bother giving a 10% title reward for Fortitude. It's
Yeah,
almost like they've given up on it. And the problem with Fortitude is HP has to scale infinitely higher than your attack in order for it to even be able to have a chance. And on top of that, there's no scalers for it. The majority of your damage from Fortitude comes from Life Leech, and there is nothing in any of the new Insight, Wrath, and Unity trees that boost it. And it's one more scaler that it doesn't have.
yeah,
And I don't know how you fix that short of either reworking the damage formula and putting in a multiplier specifically for Fortitude, like they've done in the past, or they have to create some sort of new power system that incorporates HP scaling in a way that Fortitude can keep up.
yeah. Like when I remember correctly, previously the big one hit or boss build was always Fortitude because it was consistent damage. It was very high single target damage, but really struggled on group damage, which was Fire Red and Lightning Tempest to some degree. If you remember the sword pet meta, sword pet symbol meta,
Yeah.
it was good AOE. It was decent single target, but it wasn't quite as good as Fort in single target. But then again, Fire Red was extreme AOE and no boss damage whatsoever, and it was extremely inconsistent without the double casts we have right now.
Or technically, you can triple dip between your if you run sword or not sword. If you run U-Dagger, you can triple dip it with Camaros and what is it, Pyromaniac if you get lucky.
Yep.
But aside from that, the biggest weakness you can see easily, and Elemental Raid shows this off better than anything in the game. Elemental Raid was pretty much designed with the main attraction being the massive multiplier to elemental damage. And I don't remember what it is, but I think it's when you break the shield, something like 170 times the damage or something.
Oh, yeah.
And that should favor Retribution, and yet Tempest absolutely destroys it.
Yep.
10 out of 10 times by literally switching your pet symbols and go. And that just shows the scaling problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think one thing that contributes a lot is because the elemental skill damage is extremely boosted by for the pets or for the pet attacks, which makes Elemental Dungeon literally Tempest Fest. You to select a weak element as your pet symbols, you take 3 to 4 decent shield break abilities, and that's it. You're always playing Tempest and Lightning Tempest in that case because Adrenaline Rush and Blessing of Hermes is always the best.
I mean, this week highlighted it as best as it possibly could have, being fire, and I tried a bunch of different fire retribution setups, and the best I could do on them for me was around 1 AK damage. Yeah, and then I just slapped a bunch of random stuff on for my fire Tempest, and it did like almost 2 AK damage without even trying to optimize it. And it just highlights how bad it's gotten at this point. Everything revolves around Tempest, and specifically around the pets. And I don't know how they can address it.
Yeah, it's a absolute shit show at this point because Tempest was always that fast attacking middle thing between high single target and good group damage, and now it's just an RNG fest of procs and procs and procs. Like, the damage range is so astronomical. I'm sure if I had perfect RNG, I would get triple the damage on Elemental Lord I have right now. I'm pretty sure. And I did like 50 runs in total.
I think the thing that I miss, and I've heard this from other players as well, is back when Lightning Fortitude was the meta, the one thing you could count on with Lightning Fortitude is the consistency.
Yeah.
You knew what you were going to get every single time you went in. There wasn't a ton of variation. It was you went in, you fought, you procced your fates, it blew up. You either killed the boss or you didn't. It wasn't right now where Fire Red is the equivalent of Lightning Tempest, where you go in, you hope you hit your Kata proc on the boom proc on the pet proc, and chunk 50% of the life off the boss within 3 seconds. Yeah. And then the next 5 attempts, you can run that same boss, and you might not even hit 30% on him. Right. And that's the frustration. People don't want to sit there and run the boss 50 times. I sure don't.
Yeah, if I do a little boss fight right now, it's always the same. It's either I get insane Kata procs and get to the magical threshold where in the second damage phase at like, what was it?
When your Wreath procs like 42%. That's where it all kicks off even worse now.
Yeah. Now when the amulet debuff is up and I get a insane Kata proc, I take away like 100 AG damage.
It's really funny that with the introduction of the U amulet, it's almost in your benefit on the first damage range of the boss. If you don't get it down near half, it's almost worth resetting the boss every time. Yep. Because the second half of the boss is always going to be faster, and the quicker you can get into it on the second damage phase is the better chance of you killing the boss every time because you kick in your U amulet effect and your damage skyrockets.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
It's
Like,
they almost double down on it, which is unfortunate.
yeah. It's actually quite sad to see that this is now the RNG fest we have to deal with for so long. I would rather have more consistent boss fights and just overall less RNG in fights. We have already so much RNG in the game. We don't need that amount of RNG. Like, the range is stupidly broken.
Well, I know in talking like looking at the future of the game, and right now it's most assuredly very heavy RNG based, whether you go Fire Retribution or Lightning Tempest, you are praying for procs. I'm hoping that in some way they move away from this in the future and they find ways to create more consistent damage patterns. But I hope in general they move away from RNG gated mechanics. And I know people have heard me harp so much on their Soul Stone system because it's an example
Yeah.
that
You
it
are
is
so
it's
unlucky,
pure
bro.
RNG gated, and as a player you have zero influence on it. You are at the mercy of an RNG number generator, and that's it. And that's all you can do. You can hit next and pray you hit it. And I feel like Lightning, Tempest, and Fire Retribution are the same way, where you're literally going into the battle and you're just hoping to hit those mechanics in your favor. And beyond that, you have no influence on what happens. You just pray. I
Yeah.
really hope they remove those and create ways for the player to be either consistent in their damage or actively able to influence it in some way where
Um,
it promotes the player as opposed to hit attack, hope for the best, see you in 30 seconds.
yeah. Which is literally what I just did. The boss right now, I had it at like 40 to 45% after the first damage proc on, or after the first damage rotation on Levy. So why? Why? I couldn't kill it for like 70 runs. And now all of a sudden, oh, that magical proc that I went way past to proc my U amulet is there. It doesn't feel good. Just waiting hundreds and hundreds of tries if you're going for the really best outcome and pushing really hard. It's
Well,
just not fun.
it's interesting because we were talking about the future of the game
Yeah.
and something I kind of segueing into this, something I hope they do is I wish they would make arena more interesting other than
Yeah.
you go into arena, you pick an arena build that you have made, which most of them are probably very similar. Or, I mean, for a while now, I just use my farm build because I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And you hit go for however many tickets you want, and win or lose doesn't matter. The rewards really don't matter. The shop itself really doesn't matter. Um, I think I'm sitting on over 200,000 arena coins right now because there's nothing to buy.
I think. Phew, how many do I have? Let's see. 126,000 because, yeah, there's not much to buy. You have your masterpieces,
Yeah, I mean, you
which
buy your masterpieces, your
your
powder if it's
powder,
there, and
and
that's it.
yeah, if you struggle with, if you still need blue stars or red stars, you can always summon SS rings. It's a nice little boost. It's nothing special, but why doesn't it have amulets, for example? Why doesn't it have pets? The arena, the whole Forge Stone thingy, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Going to
Somewhat
one of the
nice.
comments that Hajwad presented. This is something me and Effie talked about as well. I really wish they would balance all three symbols so
Yeah,
that you could theoretically play any build and potentially be on par
or
on any setup.
at least have a very distinct use case, and not just guild boss, because that's the only thing Fort is currently good for, and the
Yep.
Tower of Trials. But like F-Red has right now, or Fire Retribution, the Rift is better on F-Red. There's no way around it. Even though the boss fight takes longer, the AoE ability is so good that it outscales Lightning Tempest by far. And I wish
Yeah.
that would be somewhat realized in all builds, not just Efred and Lightning Tempest.
Yeah, I really wish that and I know they have mentioned in their 2024 dev notes, they had mentioned that they were looking at skills and the Arena Honor Store and Soul Stones. I suspect they're going to eventually come out with U skills. I can't see how they don't. I'm really hoping when they do, they balance them a hell of a lot better than they are now so that there is a shadow build that's viable. There is a holy build that's viable. I don't care what symbol it's in. Because if they do it correctly and balance the symbols, there would be purpose to all of the color or the elements, and there would be purpose to all the symbols. As it is now, it's you play Lightning Tempest or you play Fire Retribution, and there's no middle ground beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no holy build, there's no shadow build. I mean, there are, but none of them will ever compete in any capacity the way they have the game designed, and they need to fix that inherent flaw.
That's the big thing with my problem with Tempest. If you look at the elemental dungeon builds, and I've created a shadow version of the Tempest build. I tried Fortitude. I tried Retribution. It doesn't matter. The Lightning Tempest with some random shadow perks does perform better. And
I still have my old school Shadow Red and Shadow Fort stuff.
Damn.
And
so good.
It doesn't even hold a candle to what Lightning Tempest does just by switching symbols to Shadow.
Yeah,
it's
sad. It's sad to see.
It's easily 50 to 100 times less damage on a boss that favors elemental damage.
Mm-hmm.
And Tempest is the equivalent of your. I always compared him in the game as Retribution was your skill caster, Tempest was your auto melee attacker, and Fortitude was your HP build.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like Tempest is everything, and Fortitude is guild boss ?
Yeah.
And
literally
Fire Retribution is your bounties and your rifts, and for some people it may be better actually stage push clear than their Lightning Tempest, depending.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's sad because I used to stage push with Fire Retribution, but yeah, Tempest is just way more convenient because I don't have to switch any skills around. I don't have to group up the mobs before killing them. It's just stun them all, kill them one by one, and get to the boss. It's just more convenient. That's sad. One thing I could see them do to fix all that would be maybe charms. Do something really, really interesting with charms, a new system, new charms.
Charms would be very interesting. I don't know what they would do with them. I feel like they're going to take the easy way out, which I really hope they wouldn't. I wish. Yeah, I feel like they're just going to do U charms, and all U charms are going to be either is you get an additional skill, or maybe the numbers go higher. I'm not sure. I hope they don't cop out and go that easy route, and they do something more innovative with it.
Yeah, it's like the
numbers go burr.
Yeah, numbers go burr. It's the same old problem that PoE had with those skill gems that alternate your actual skills. There was no variety. It was all damage, 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 no utility. And now they finally changed it so up that utility gems become somewhat interesting to use and sometimes better to use than just regular damage gems. I think we could see that in charms as well. Instead of just giving levels to this and that, maybe boost fort symbols or change fort symbols to be extremely dominant with holy or shadow in particular.
I think a couple interesting things they could do with charms is right now we have SSS charms. If they did U charms, as an for instance, something interesting they could do with them is instead of it adding another skill, it could be a different slot for potentially, say, +3 to Tempest symbol or +5 to the Sage minor symbol, or if they wanted to even go further, they could do something along the lines of specialize the charm. So, like, you made an attack charm that's specialized, for instance, in bows. So
Mm-hmm.
now bows get a bigger, that would broaden, it would make
That would make so much of
more
a difference.
charms, because then you'd have to have a bow set and a dagger set and a sword set and a ring set, etc.,
Yeah,
depending on content. But it would also expand it out so that there's more variety. It would give you something to build towards.
yeah, especially with the current meta of switching while on the boss. It's always the same five charms. It's always the same imbues. Nothing really changed. Besides, in the last update, Reaper became a viable option on the boss, but still.
I much prefer the Reaper meta as
Yeah, it's
opposed
less
to the
RNG.
Fate 3-second pray to God you hit it meta.
Yeah, so much less RNG, and RNG is something. I see the need for RNG, and I see the value in RNG, but it's way too much at this point. It's just way too much. That's just my opinion.
I think the max for symbols is 125. I'd have to ask Hoodlum.
Yeah, 125. He's been on that for quite some time. I think I'm at
Yeah.
112 now. Yeah. So 125, they will do something in the future. Of course, to to increase the cap, because what do you do with honor coins? Why would you do anything but your five?
They need to they need to expand the shop.
Yeah.
I mean, at the minimum, double at least what's in there viable would be a start, but they need to offer more options in general.
Speaking of shops, can we just quickly talk about the packages? If you want to spend, like, SSS weapon package, purchase available 3. You get 500 gems, 1 broken rune for blade, dagger, and bow, or sword, dagger, and bow, 1 SSS weapon, 100 SS stones, and 10A, or 10 million enhanced stones for 90 euros. Or, I don't know, what's a big pack for you in the US? Like $100?
I think the biggest one in the US is $79.99. I don't ever look at them.
Yeah, it's just no value for a lot of money.
If you're looking for value, it's always going to be in their events.
Of course, but
and even then, not every event is created equal either.
I think just the shop should be somewhat overhauled, renewed to the new standard we have playing this game. Because nobody cares about 100 SS stones anymore. Like, since 5 patches or more.
I mean, I would go one step further. SS stones, they have almost no use now in general for, I shouldn't say all players. Obviously, some of us
Most
have way more than
players.
others, but most players. Um, it's kind of the similar boat for a lot of longer time players, I would say, where rune dice is not even a remote issue anymore. They probably have millions of them just lying around. I actually submitted to Mobirix that they Soulstones has been one of the pain points, but it was also one of the points where I thought using rune dice to be able to influence things, either influence, say, the rank that you would get of a skill, or potentially being able to influence what options were offered, would give a use to rune dice. I'm not saying like spend 100,000 rune dice, get exactly what you want, but I'm saying like spend 10,000 rune dice, you're guaranteed an SSS on the next roll. It could be anything depending on which option you chose, but at least then it would give some semblance of use to rune dice because with the U equipment, there's no use to it.
Yeah,
And there's
there's
not enough use from the world raid that you'll ever run out.
yeah. Like if I look at my wallet right now, it's how many SS stones? 323,000 SSS stones, 137,000 and 106,000 U stones. And at least 7.7 thousand broken runes on everything. It's I don't know what to do with all those.
Yeah, I don't have that high, but I also haven't spent everything.
I've
Yeah,
spent pretty much
I
everything.
mean, I have 53 million rune dice, and I know some people have uh,
Almost.
painstakingly tried to roll on items to convert them at a 2-to-1 rate for diamonds, which is a solid plan.
Yeah.
Especially if you're wanting diamonds, it's just very time consuming. Aside from that, though, once you have your U gear, they don't have a purpose.
They don't.
Absolutely no purpose.
They have only purpose in converting to diamonds, which should be automatic. Like, let us buy diamonds with rune dice.
I I forgot who it was. It might have been Catless or Devil that were saying they, or no, I think it was Charmin and Scrub. They were saying they wanted a rune dice shop. I actually don't think it's a bad idea,
Yeah,
honestly.
it's not a bad idea. Just give us something to do with them. Like it's just a wasted resource. At least gold has some use now with expert attack and HP, which scales absolutely fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of my rune dice I think come from Goblin Dungeon, and feel free anybody to correct me if I'm wrong there. So it's not like the source of it is infinite, but it's not like
You have
you can only
loads.
get so many keys a day. And if they did a rune shop dice and they did it correctly and they put in, I don't know, I mean you could throw in SSS masterpieces, SSs, you could throw in potentially item summons, or if something that might actually be interesting to throw in
Pet
a rune dice
summons.
shop, pet summons, but the new thing that they introduced a while back, the exchange tickets. You could theoretically throw them in there
Ah,
for a moderately priced number, and for newer players, it would give them like the potential opportunity. For instance, say they wanted to, I want this sword or I want this dagger, they could just
yeah,
pick one of those if they had excess and guarantee themselves that they would at least have that item.
yeah.
Just something for new players potentially.
Uh, I would say we should really, really focus now on quality of life for the new players, that they can catch up to the players that have a lot of resources already. Not to the degree that, like, it's almost better to start a new account than have an old account, but you know what I mean. It's just the gap widens more and more, and the competition gets more and more left behind, pretty much. And
I
time
think they
is,
need to keep focusing on new players.
yeah, absolutely.
Long-term players like us and others in general, they're going to stick around. They've done their time. They've spent where they want to spend, and now they're just kind of coasting along. I think there needs to be
Exactly.
more for new players to really just get them engaged and involved to want to keep playing.
Yeah, like the current thing where you have especially went for new players, that's already a good start. But we can really focus on mechanics that just service as somewhat of a catch-up mechanic. Also,
I would like to see them really just quality of life in general.
quality of life is really,
They
really
really need to focus on quality of life. The change they did with pets, for example, was really good. I was really hoping they weren't going to do what they initially thought was a suggestion, which
Oh yeah,
was create a pet swapping quick bar, which would have been an absolute nightmare.
that would have been such a fucking nightmare.
So I'm glad they were just like, here's all the pets. They work at a percentage value. Go. It's much more quality of life. I like the concept of weapon switching, but I do feel like right now, with the way they've created it, it's a lot of the best way I can describe this. And I know some people in our guild have done it, but I know they've also done this a ton in Korea as well. A lot of people are playing on PC and just macroing the hot swapping because it's too much of a pain on the phone.
Yeah,
And the clamor over there is they want it to be an idle game first with some interactivity, but they don't want it to feel like it's a job every time. And I think that's a really good way to phrase it.
yeah, it's becoming more and more of a raid encounter in World of Warcraft where you have to perform for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, perfect inputs, unless you don't want to push as high. It's
Yeah,
it's
I
kind of
I
sad.
I have a macro for it.
I have a macro for
Um,
it, of course.
yeah, I honestly, it's ironic. I actually still end up manual pushing because I just find that the more I messed around with it, um, it's a lot easier to time certain things with a manual push that you can't do when you're doing a calculated macro. And I realized that there's certain overlaps and timings where it's actually better to manual do it than try to macro it because it's not always perfect.
Yeah, it's because
Not
of
to say the
the
macros don't
FPS
work.
rate. It's mostly because of the FPS rate, which affects it a lot. Like I'm swimming right now between 50 and 80 FPS. At a boss fight, I'm bouncing around like 90 to 115, and that's a
It,
huge pain in the ass if you want to apply like a fate debuff, and it doesn't get applied in time.
it's interesting because if I do it on my computer on LD Player or even BlueStacks, I've got both. On boss fights, I'll bounce anywhere between 80 and 240 frames. On my
Jesus.
tablet that I typically play on, it's a steady 120. There's no variation on it at all. It's just 120. And it's much easier for me to manually push on my tablet than it is to macro push on my PC because the difference between 80 and 240 frames per second is enough milliseconds in between that it'll screw up macroing. So just don't bother.
Mm-hmm.
But
Uh,
the fact that it's a concern in Korea is a good thing because it's not something that global is just it's just us. They're not happy about it either. But the
Nobody's happy
reality
about it.
is their voice is unfortunately louder than ours. So
Yep.
it's that's all we can do.
Yeah, pretty much. So thank you, Korea, for speaking out the same things we also struggle with and have problems with.
Price, in regards to your question, after a certain point, I honestly at this point I would assume most people already passed it. I think 901 was the last real threshold
Yeah,
where like pushing up mattered. At this point,
it's
1500 and higher, all you're getting by going up in levels is a little bit extra EXP and gold and enhanced stones.
yep. That's
Most everything else has been capped for you for ages.
also stage pushing is since when was the last big jump? 1,600 or 1,700 for
1700. I think it's where the pages stopped
yeah pages
doubling.
pages stopped increasing at all. So we're getting 324, 325,000 pages per stage we push. So
Is it
that
1600? It might have been.
I think 1,600. Yeah. So yeah, after 1600, it's just same parchment for the whole ride. Oh, one thing uh, I was curious about your thoughts on it. New dungeons. What could they do?
Truthfully, I know this is kind of a slippery slope. I do wish that they would have a dungeon for uh, parchment. Um, I don't think they need a dungeon for rune dice, although I could see the
Mm,
possibility of that for newer players who don't have a bunch and they're trying to roll their stuff. Um,
I mean, the parchment dungeon should be the Forgotten Library, right?
if they would ever expand it out to be further than what it is, but I just, in general, they need to expand the hatchery and the
Yes,
library
yes.
at least 10 more levels because
15.
I'm hoping with the announcement that they said they had mentioned, I believe, skills in one of the dev update notes. I'm hoping that they do something with the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting that they could do is so we have, I believe it's 5 elements. They could do elemental dungeons where instead of needing, say, rune threads or books or whatever, you could. This is all hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you could come out with new skills, obviously, for the 5 elements, but you would be able to. Something you could theoretically do is create elemental dungeons where you would get kind of similar to what they do now, where you on reset you get X amount of keys for each dungeon. They could just do, say, 2 for each elemental dungeon or something. And what the elemental dungeon would do would give you materials specific to like elemental skills. The difference being here in the
Ah.
thought process would be instead of the skills being like, I'm just going to use shadow because it's the first one I thought of. Like, say there's a shadow skill that's really good and there's 5 or 10 new shadow skills. Instead of capping them at level 30 or 20 or 10 or whatever they would choose, give them an unlimited cap with infinite scaling. And yes, it would obviously be like, as we all know, the meta would be somebody would define it and everybody would dump their skills into it. If they would do a good enough job in balancing, that wouldn't be the case. Or if they could figure out ways to synergize the skills so that they work in tandem. But I think that would also lend help to, in general, creating more element based builds where you could have a shadow build off of the new shadow skills, and you could theoretically run these new shadow skills to create potentially new builds.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you could scale these shadow builds based off an elemental dungeon. You could do the same for holy and ice. The all of them need to be upgraded, but really the ones that have been underutilized the most have easily been ice and holy. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever seen them in the limelight ever.
Never. I've never seen a
Um,
holy build. Ice. I can remember. I can remember. I've played Ice Tempest
I've messed with
before.
Ice Red and Ice Tempest.
Before switching to Shadow Retribution back in the day.
Ah, Shadow Red, my old favorite.
It was such a good build. Oh, big F for Shadow Red because that was the epitome of greatness.
I have tested Lightning Retribution price. I was actually using it back in the day before my Fire Ret was really good. It was viable. I'm sure it's still viable now, but if you get your Fire Retribution build up, it's not close in damage potential.
Yeah, it's the
It is
same.
absolutely usable though as a budget build to get you off on Retribution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like it's the same with Shadow Tempest, which is one of my favorite things to do. Playing around, it's like 30% of lightning tempest damage, so not even close to viable.
You know, I just they in going back to your question on dungeons, they have potential to do a lot of different dungeon things if they wanted to do them. I I know. Oh, I really don't want to suggest this because I absolutely hated this in other idle games, but it is something that they theoretically could do. Is a they could do a boss rush style dungeon,
Oh, boss
and
rush.
um, there's a lot of different
Mm,
rewards you could throw in there. You could do rewards that are currently in game. You can make a new reward type. I know the one. This is why I'm dreading this. I know the one that's commonly used behind boss rushes almost always ends up being costumes. I really don't want to see costumes,
nah,
but it
nah.
would give another scaler.
Like wings.
Yes, but the problem with costumes is in any game, they monetize it. And that's the
Uh,
problem.
yeah.
If they just created a boss rush dungeon and they were like, you get 2 keys a day and there's zero way to get any more, and they baseline that and then they put costumes in there and they only come from there, not from packages, not from anything monetary, no way to get any more, and they gated it solely behind this dungeon, it puts everybody on equal footing. Whereas if what normal companies do is they'll be like, okay, well, here's an event pass, and here's an event pass, and you can get these costumes in it, and then here's this dungeon, and you have a percent chance to get it done.
Yeah.
Those are not fun. Those are
Those are.
horrid money grabs that piss people off.
Yeah. And let's be real, we can spend.
That's what they would do.
Yeah.
That's what they would do. That's why I was like,
Oh,
I don't
please
want them
not.
to bring costumes, but at the same time, going all the way back to an earlier point, how could you fix fortitude? Costumes.
Yeah, especially in a
Because you could
boss
be like,
rush dungeon when
well, you
for
could be like, here's a costume. It gives you 50% attack. It gives you 200% HP. It
there
gives
you
you
go.
X% life leech. Okay, you just scaled the two main stats of fortitude far more than you scaled the stat of attack
Mm-hmm.
because of the
Mm-hmm.
way the multipliers would work. And then you could do after, that would help fortitude catch up. Would it ever catch up? Probably not, but it would put it in a potentially playable state.
Yeah, if fortitude is at least on, I'd say 80 to 85% of lightning tempest's potential, then it's already more consistent. It's way more fun to play. It's just better in my opinion. Of course, lightning tempest could always reign supreme, but if you get that close already, it's fixed for me. It's absolutely fixed. Right now, it's more than 100 times weaker than lightning tempest.
I think that's the problem, though, and that's what a lot of people want. They want symbol and elemental parity, and it's never going to be perfect. But if
Oh,
you could get the outlier builds, like, and I'm referring to outlier builds as not just fortitude or lightning fortitude, but like shadow wretch, shadow fort. If you
mm-hmm.
could get them within 20% of lightning tempest, at least then it wouldn't be a feels bad moment being like, oh, well, you don't have the perfect lightning tempest build, you're already 90% less efficient than me.
Yeah, it's
you know it would offer variety to players, which is what we really need because the meta has been so stagnant.
and so stale, so
It
bland.
needs a shakeup, and the only way I ever see a shakeup occurring is it would have to be done by U skills.
Yeah,
They would have to create new
skills and elements
skills.
maybe.
Yeah, they would have to create new skills or power progressions that would not favor Lightning Tempest, but favor the other builds. And the only way they're going to be able to do that realistically, based on the way the current game is by introducing new skills that simply, they kind of did this before, which is how they phased out Shadow Retribution.
Mm-hmm.
They have to introduce new skills that simply outscale the old skills.
Yeah, which is the combo of Blessing of Hermes and Adrenaline Rush. It's very hard to outscale. But yeah,
It'd be interesting if instead of tying this skill to an element, for instance, we'll use Blessing of Hermes because it's the most obvious. I believe that one is holy. It'd be
yeah,
interesting if instead of saying Blessing of Hermes is holy, you could be like Blessing of Hermes is, and you pick the element.
that would
So
be
Blessing of Hermes is now Shadow.
insane. That would be
It
absolutely insane.
it would, it would be absolutely lunar,
because of
but it would grant synergy to all the other builds.
It would grant synergy without losing out on really insane effects. And you can do it very, very easily, like Static Charge has a global increased damage stat, not only lightning, even though it's lightning. If we make it,
if they figured out a way, that would be what you just said is probably the biggest point. If they could figure out a way to make a majority of these skills less elemental based and more global based, you would probably be able to create a lot more builds.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would have the ability to not only hit the 6/6 synergy, which you want, but you would also be able to kind of mix and match a bit more. Because there's skills and passives that look really cool that simply don't fit the current build meta because they're either not the right element or they're just not good compared to the other skills in element.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see them being able to get around this short of either making new skills or expanding out the current skill list so that the other skill types and such scale high enough that warrant using them over the current meta.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea, Ajwad. Dual element.
Dual element. Huh.
Yeah.
That could also be really nice. I mean, we have that kind of with the rune system. Pick your rune, blah blah blah. But the same skill split into.
They have a lot of options available to them.
Creativity.
It's more a matter of do they have the developer brains and manpower to put it together?
Yeah. And don't gatekeep it behind monetization, or don't think of monetization first. Players will invest, players will spend if the game is good.
I think that's the biggest thing every single game never gets.
Yeah, I don't know.
If the game base is good and it's fun and the free-to-play players feel like they can make a dent and a contribution, they're more inclined to spend than if you try to forcibly shove all of this in their face and go, spend money. And that's going to be the biggest turnoff.
Yep. I mean, I get it with free-to-play titles. They have a lot of costs and they need to make a lot of money to make it work. But they can make it work while having a good game.
The thing is, you're always going to have spenders in every game.
Exactly. And it's...
You don't have to pander everything to them. You can look at some of the biggest games out there. Clash of Clans is a prime example of one where your top 10 spenders probably fund that entire game 30 times over, if not more.
Yeah. I think the one guy, the wife of my brother met in State of Survival, he spent like $500,000 on the game.
I've got a buddy of mine who is so invested in Clash of Clans, he spent over $1.7 million.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. Disposable income is a nice thing, but $1.7 million to most people is the equivalent of a very comfortable life.
Yeah, lifetime.
So, I think in general, and I'm not pointing this out as anybody in here, but in general, like, spend responsibly or when you can. Don't ever feel like you're obligated, because you're not. I know a lot of people are like, I want to be at the top, or I have to spend, or I have to be the best. Don't. No. That's literally the mindset of the game. Don't fall into it.
Yeah. Don't fall into it. Take it from me, rank 2. Orion, what rank are you right now? 4?
I don't know. I don't ever pay attention to my rank. I usually push on the patch and then I go back to hoarding.
Oh, yeah. Hoarder is rank 8 right now.
Yeah, hoarder.
But yeah. Don't spend...
Am I 8? Who passed me?
Could
beat Scrub later.
Yeah, Scrub, Buffalo, Slammer, and
Oh yeah, Wells. The foreign person.
Yeah.
I just call him Wells.
Yeah. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he's really nice.
So yeah, one more thing I would like to say. I want to see new wings. I like the wing system. I think it's a great little boost, but more would be better. Like a little bit more customization options. They
I
don't have to
think
be
their wing system,
crazy.
I think their wing system is a really good example of how to incorporate like a costume style system completely free
Absolutely,
to play.
absolutely.
I think they need to expand on their wing system because everybody has access to it. It's free to play. It's not gated behind anything other than time.
And it's
I
not an insane boost. It's not like
well,
all
to be
combined,
fair,
yes,
well,
but
no, to be fair, they mentioned in the dev updates, I believe, that they were going to turn certain things into new coefficients.
hmm,
Um, Theoretically, that could create player power, but again, the wings everybody has access to, and once you get them, you have them. It's not like you scale them; it's just you get them, you have them. That's it.
yeah,
I think they should expand on the wing system more. I agree with you. Something fun they could do is you were mentioning new dungeons. They could theoretically create a new wing dungeon where you run the dungeon for like we'll say a regular currency. You can do it once a day. I'm just throwing out random numbers here. And present to you maybe 15 or 20 new wings, all that come out of this dungeon. And the idea would be that you would save up and buy the wing that you wanted from the dungeon. Because wings are cosmetic and they're always on.
yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's all. And they've already got the system in place to do it.
It's so good.
Because
It's so easy.
theoretically you could take the current raid dungeon, change the currency to you get one a day, and there you go. You're
Hmm.
done.
Yeah, especially don't give us the option to rune loop those things because right now, looking at my raid keys, I'm actually kind of sad. With almost,
No, I wouldn't say rune loop it at all. It was just you get one a day and that's it. The
yeah,
only thing like wing setup would be for is the longer you play, the more benefit you get, which is what an idle game should be.
yeah, incremental gain.
And
It's
it's free access to everybody and nobody gets an advantage. You go, you do it, you slowly build up, and then you buy the wing that you're most interested in.
yeah, absolutely agreed. It's the perfect solution, and it's a daily log-in incentive that
Yep.
doesn't cost money, that isn't predatory, that isn't anymore allowed in China.
It's just little things like this and quality of life things that they could do could really improve their game more than it is. But it would certainly help new players and just players in general to want to keep playing because you're incentivized to just log in, play the game, but you're not incentivized to like I have to log in and I have to play 7 hours a day for dailies. It
Yeah.
shouldn't ever be like that.
On that note, I really think that dailies are very, very well made. I can do most dailies in like 20 to 25 minutes. Of course, besides the 1 hour daily.
I
But
will throw this out there because we kind of just touched on it. Um, Online versus offline farming.
online versus offline farming is way too big of a gap. I
I
mean,
agree.
yes, I can see the incentive that you want active players on your servers because obviously. But online farming isn't the guy who sits on his phone and watches that little dude kill monster after monster. It's I'm leaving my PC.
Yeah, you're burning electric on your PC on a player or a tablet overnight that you don't need to touch.
At work, I leave my phone in power save mode, and that's it. I'm not spending. I'm not incentivized to spend. It's just yeah, okay, nice. I
So
can
another game that I play, and I don't really play it religiously, but I do play it, is Demigod Idol. But The thing I like about that game more than anything is the fact that their online and offline farming is identical. So you log on, you do your stuff, I log off. It's like 30 minutes at best of actual gameplay, and then I don't have to look at it for another 24 hours.
That's
I
nice.
wish this game was something similar. So
Yeah,
like
that the offline and
right
online gap
now
is
the
at least
online farming, yeah, the offline farming right now is atrocious in this game.
it's really
It's
atrocious. It's
horrible.
Is it because offline doesn't spawn elites?
Yeah, that's part of it. You don't spawn elites, and that shuts down two of the main gems that you use when you online farm.
Yeah.
Because the difference between no elites and online farming, like my elite percent online right now, I believe is 40.7% online. And the fact that you get 10 times rewards
From elites.
potentially off elites is absurd.
So you get 5 times the loot, pretty much.
Yeah. Just for staying online. And they really and it's not just that. I know I'm sure there's people in this chat and here, but even if not, Hood is a prime example of this one.
Oh,
Because he doesn't play online. He doesn't have food for his pets. That is one of the biggest misses.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely
Like he
fucking
has
insane.
capped pets, but my pets are higher level than his because I farmed online, and I have still almost 100 million food just sitting there.
Yeah, same here. I have like 90 million food, but I don't have the pets to level them up.
Right, we have the opposite problem.
Yeah, we have literally the opposite problem, mostly because we didn't spend a shit ton of diamonds on pets, but still, I want to level my pets.
To answer your question, no, Hood actually plays off of his phone.
Yeah.
And he's very rarely online. He usually logs on, does his dailies and whatnot, and that's it. So yeah, he's not an online farmer like a lot of us.
Yeah, no, he's the exception in the top 10, I'd say. Pure phone gamer.
I'm not sure if I think Scrubbo actually is very similar. I don't think he plays online very much either.
Ah, okay. Okay.
But aside from them, those are the only ones that I know don't tend to play online very much. And I think most of the rest of us just um, have it run in the background or use a remote link play device.
Mm. So yeah, that's
yeah. I
much.
would really like to see them. I don't want to say fix because I don't think they'll ever fix it, but I do think they need to massively improve the offline potential. Even just making offline 50 to 75% of what you can get on online would be a massive boon to the player base as a whole.
Oh yeah. Yeah, give them 50 to 75%. I don't care what of those two.
I don't either.
It's
I would prefer 100.
It's not even 10% at this point.
Yeah, I would much prefer it to be 100%. Honestly, I feel like I can't find a reason other than them wanting to look at metrics for people who play online as to why your game functionally couldn't run with a reward system that grants you the same amount of rewards whether you're online or not. Because even if we're all like, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I'm online 24/7, but the amount of time I actually play the game is probably less than 30 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
12.5%.
12.5. Okay.
Yeah, that's what Kay was saying. It was 12.5%.
Yeah,
it's small, whatever
good.
it is.
It feels good, but it's so much less than online.
I think Kraken did the math at one point and said, if you earn 100,000 food offline, equivalent online would be 1 million. Yeah. Don't quote me on that. He did the math for it, but I mean that's 10%, and that's awful.
Yeah, around 10%. If it's like 12.5 or 10 exactly. Doesn't matter. It's way too little. It's way too little, and
It really is.
It should be
Well,
corrected.
and it's not even just that. Like, you're losing enhanced stones, you're losing equipment drops. XP and gold kind of irrelevant. Your gold really comes from goblin dungeons when you decide to do it, and your XP.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, I've been getting more XP out of the quick battle lately than I have out of Rift.
I have
I'm not.
actually an XP set up for quick battle. Just charms with gold find and XP gain.
Do you run it over your item find?
Only for quick battle.
Fair enough.
Because
I
the
haven't
item
looked
find
into
is
it. I have them set up.
the item find is the same, but yeah, it's just one damage stat rolled off for XP gain on charms.
Okay, the item find I'm referring to is out of your awakening page.
No, awakening page stays item find.
That's
way
what
too
I
much
was
to give
asking.
up, but yeah, XP gain isn't enough to make a big dent, but it's like 10% more XP, which is nice.
I'm not sure item find on charms is ever going to matter. And I say that only because after I mean, I don't know what you're at, Effie. I'm at 320%. I think after a certain percentage, it just stops scaling somewhat.
Yeah, no, same with the Goblin Dungeon being kept at 243% for diamonds specifically. Because if I run a lot of Goblin Dungeons in Quick Battle, I still refer to my item find build, so I can get the max out of amulets. But besides that, I'm only running gold find build.
So the funny thing is, I think on my gold find build now, my item find is almost capped, or is capped. So it doesn't even matter anymore.
Interesting.
I was comparing, I was doing testing when I had like some 10,000 goblin keys. And what I was looking at is if I ran a full gold find build versus a full item find build, both manual and quick battle, what the difference would be. And I was doing them in batches of 100 keys, so to give a big variety in testing. I did 5, I did 10, I did 50, I did 100, I did ones. The bigger amount of keys you run, the gap obviously grows in favor of item find for like weapons and amulets and rings.
Of course.
But it's not as excessive as people actually think. It was something like, if I ran gold find, obviously you get way more gold than you'll ever get in an item find setup. It's not even remotely close.
Yeah.
But I was getting 95 to 98% of the drops in my full gold find set as opposed to my full item find set.
Okay.
So I was having a hard time justifying ever running an item find set ever again in Goblin Dungeon when you could get the majority of similar numbers off of your gold find set.
Okay, I gotta look at that as well.
And I tried to do a bunch of batches for testing because obviously with the Goblin Dungeon there's always variance.
Of course.
I know. I mean, like one run I would get like 400,000 amulets, on the next run I might only get 270,000, and that's just variance. There's no way you can control that.
Yeah. I need to really look into that when it comes to gold find and item find, because right now I'm just manually running gold find. Of course,
I run like 5 or 6 manual gold finds.
I'm running like 100 overnight, and yeah, when I wake up with like 250 AO.
Ayo.
Ayo.
All right, whatever.
Something like that. And yeah, that's all my gold find I'll ever need.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, it's the cost per point it just scales ludicrously on expert attack, and the ones below it really don't contribute anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm at 1.12 billion, I think, on attack, almost level 4,000, So yeah, nothing contributes anymore besides expert attack or expert HP for Fort. But yeah,
Def, in regards to your question, so I ran, this was about 10 days ago. I ran 100 runs in Goblin Dungeon with item find maxed, and I ran 100 dungeons and Goblin Dungeon as gold find on quick battles. The difference in E-stones between the two, both of them being 100 battles, was 13A. So basically nothing.
Nothing. Literally nothing. Alright. Do you have anything you want to add? Or any thoughts that came to you?
No. I know I wanted to bring up the online offline because we didn't have it, but I think it's something that they really need to address.
Yeah, online offline
sooner than later
needs to be addressed, in my opinion as well, because it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the 6th episode of Foresight. And don't forget to join the community Discord for all our guides and the wonderful help desk. It's discord.gg/Immortal Rising. I'm Efical.
I'm Raine.
And we hope you have a wonderful next year, 2024.